Hello, I'm the British drummer, Bill Bruford, and I'm here to tell you a little bit about a song by King Crimson called Larks, Tongues in Aspic. I joined King Crimson in about 1973, I think, having spent 4 years with Yes, and Larks, Tongues in Aspic was the first album I made with King Crimson. Many commentators traditionally lump all progressive rock groups together, which would be a mistake because the four I know well, which is Genesis, King Crimson, Yes, and UK, were all entirely different organisations with quite different ethos and desires for the outcomes of the group. King Crimson's Robert Fripp was really not the same kind of person as Jon Anderson in Yes. They're quite different people. King Crimson was going to make a darker sound. It wasn't quite the enjoyable vocal heavy sound of Yes, very diatonic, major key kind of band that Yes was. It was a darker, more instrumental place, more improvised, less certain about anything, less certain about getting any kind of popular success, even though King Crimson's first record, In the Court of the Crimson King, had been a huge smash. I suppose you could say that King Crimson was an instrumental group with the occasional song, whereas Yes was a group of singers singing songs with the occasional instrumental break. It's a different emphasis, really. So King Crimson was all about instrumental playing, or largely about instrumental playing, and I felt I had places to go with that. I'd only played behind four other people for 4 years of my very short career, so I was, looking for a change. Robert Fripp had selected the personnel for this record, this new version of King Crimson that we were going to have. Bill Bruford on drums, John Wetton from Family on bass, an unknown to me musician called David Cross on violin, and a known musician to me, bit of a wild card, Jamie Muir, on percussion. Jamie was from the London free jazz scene, so he was not your regular rock guy. None of us were regular rock guys, for heaven's sake, but Jamie of all, I suppose, was the most of a wild card. Robert would typically come to rehearsals at the outset of these bands with a very strong idea of the ballpark that we should be playing on, the perimeter of it. That is to say, we'd play on this bit here, but we wouldn't play that. We wouldn't play old folk music. We wouldn't play that, and we wouldn't play that. We'd probably play within these parameters. So now we've got to find something to do within these particular parameters. And he would have selected, in the sort of Miles Davis method, 4 or 5 interesting people. This is sometimes known as the aversion therapy of record making. You put 4 or 5 interesting people into a recording studio, you lock the door, you keep them there for 3 weeks, and they will probably make an interesting album or kill each other. It depends which comes first, really. But Robert was good, and he would come with 2 or 3 compositions that would indicate the parameter of the ballpark. This is the kind of thing I think we could do. How can we make this better and bigger? Which was great. And he started off with much of Larks, Tongues in Aspic Part 1, which we're discussing, and also the second part of it, Larks, Tongues in Aspic Part 2, and we're putting something else. But that was enough to be going on with. And so we got to work on those 2 tunes and tried, such as they were, and tried to build them up and make them into something pretty epic. We started recording Larks, Tongues at Command Studios, I think, in Piccadilly. Not a high-priced place at all. It was instantly rechristened Collapse Studios because everything seemed to break most of the time. And Jamie it was quite a good recording space, occupied 3/4 of it, at least I would think, with small instruments in a forest of microphones. So many microphones, it looked like a forest. That's all I can say. And everything was needed to be monitored and fed back down in headphones. Quite a tricky recording environment. But he was sensational. Got to say he was sensational, and he played prepared drum kits. If you know anything about modern music, it's often prepared instruments are altered. Their sound is altered to give new timbres that will come from the instruments. Thumbtacks in piano keys, for example. In Jamie's case, he would put a steel baking tray inside the bass drum. There would be chains and sheets of metal lying on the tom-toms and cymbals. So the whole drum kit is going to sound like an military industrial complex in overdrive. He was terrific. It sounded absolutely great. And that came steaming in. We didn't play quite at the same time. Mostly while I was playing kit drums while he was playing percussion. If he was playing kit drums, I would probably hang out or play percussion. And I think we got off to a pretty good start. There was sort of 2 or 3 minutes of Jamie's small, tiny little tinkly bells, the tinkleberries, as we got to know them, and I didn't make an appearance on this record until 3.5 minutes into it, at which point I had to play a roll. And I tell you, it was a great roll. And this thing came from nowhere, and it was the biggest introduction to the most humongous rock riff you're likely to hear, which was the beginning of Larks, Tongues and Aspic Part. The song itself went through several sections and a little tiny little bit in the middle, a little lovely little melody in the middle seemed to come from nowhere, which was sometimes referred to as the lark's tongue in the middle of the aspic, the fabric of roughage, which was the musical environment in which this little pretty lark's tongue found itself. And then it went off to a long conclusion and a large uphill burst, like so many progressive rock tracks did, and a climax which had a voiceover. And the voiceover was from a play I think, called The Weir of Hermston. I think it was the judge of Hermston. And he's pronouncing the death sentence. He's put a black triangular hat on his head, and he's pronouncing the death sentence on a murderer. And you hear on the word dead, you hear the entire musical scenario changes. The album Larks, Tongues and Aspic duly came out and was released in the UK and in America, I think, around the same time. This would be about 1973, I think. We went off on tour, and Jamie was really something on tour too. He was something of a performance actor, so he would be prowling around his instruments with no shirt on or vest, but a bearskin top, prowling around like this, looking wary, looking like he's about to murder someone, actually. And I can remember on a rainy Thursday night in Preston, Lancashire, him climbing the PA stacks over there and over there. He'd crossed the stage with blood pouring from his face down here with blood capsules. And I thought he was going to kill someone. It was absolutely amazing. On top of one of these things, he hurled one of these chains, across the stage towards his drum kit to try to activate his drum kit from over there. And a huge crashing sound as he did so. But it nearly caught Robert Fripp, who took a step back and just sat back a bit out of the way in the early days of King Crimson's performances. But they were exciting. Nobody knew quite what was happening, and certainly nobody knew how the music would be received. Jamie taught me a lot by not saying very much. He taught me about, I think, life, musical life, if you like, but life beyond the cymbals. Problem with drummers is we're often very myopic, is that the word? Rather short-sighted. And we see things as far as the cymbals go, and we don't quite hear what it is the bass player wants to hear or what it is the guitar player is hearing. We often miss that. And I was at that age when, of course, I paid no attention to those people. Who needs them? I was a drummer. And Jamie quietly and very authoritatively told me that there was life beyond the cymbals. And most importantly, the music did not exist to serve me. I existed to serve the music. So Larks, Tongues and Aspic, the album, came out in the US, I think, to pretty good reviews, probably from New York Times and good critics. And I think on the whole it was well received, although I didn't really know anything about chart positions or sales. I wasn't in the business of asking about sales. But I do remember sitting in a limousine in Los Angeles going down La Cienega Boulevard with a kind of Los Angeles promotion man. We were off to the radio station who was going to play some cuts from the album, which is terrific. And hey, in advance of my visit to the radio station, the disc jockey, the DJ in question says, and they'll be along quite soon, and here is the first cut on the album, Larks, Tongues in Aspic, Part 1. I look at my compatriot in the car and go, this is it, this is fantastic. And the music starts. Unfortunately, it's a very quiet start. The beginning to the album is very quiet. It's so quiet that road noise from the average limousine will wipe it out immediately. So that lasts for about 3 minutes till the press roll that I said I started with 3.5 minutes into the song. So after about a minute, this guy's beginning to fidget, beginning to look anxious, and I'm looking at him and he's looking at me and he's thinking, is this the new King Crimson album that Atlantic Records has just bought? Is it art? He's thinking, is it art? And, we didn't, I said, turn it up. And eventually we got the tinkleberries that I referred to earlier on, began to twinkle into the car, and it was great. And then we got the humongous riff, and then we were back in normal land. So that was great. I don't think any of us had heard anything quite like the music from Larks, Tongues in Aspic before, even though we'd made it. I don't think any of us had heard anything quite like that. And I remember thinking that if I could make genre-busting music like this, then my departure from Yes would have been worth it. It was very exciting. I liked it a lot. I knew it would be different, but I didn't know it'd be that different.